Hello.
Hello. How are you? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Good deal. I viewed some of the information on your website. You have quite an impressive story to share.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to check mine out at all?
I saw your note. Let me go there. I saw that you sent it. Give a chance. Okay, yeah, because you mentioned here that you are a former homeless, a veteran with a true story of redemption. Tell me more about you.
Yeah, I'm a two-time suicide survivor. I lived in two different homeless shelters. I uh, I was in the military, obviously, kicked out of there for smoking marijuana back in the mid 80s when the Reagans had their big war on drugs, and how it have times changed. But since then, but that's a whole other story for another day. But yeah, it was a tough road to go down. It was a story that is of faith and redemption, and kind of along those lines, coming from the gutter. That's how I came up with the gutter gospel. I think everybody in life has been through the gutter in one point or another, either through growing up, the trials of going through adolescence and all that stuff. That's tough enough on everybody. So, but it's a story about really how that you can run as far away from God as you want, but He's going to pull you back and redeem you from the gutter. In my case, so yes,
So you touch bottom and being there. How was your encounter with God?
yeah. My encounter with God was actually years ago. If you read my sample chapters on my website, the first I've struggled with bipolar and have for my entire adult life. So the
Mhm.
first real taste of that happened clear as day to me July 31st of 1988, to be exact. I was home alone and had a day off, which was rare because I was working 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts doing heavy construction work. So it just happened I had a day off, and I was just resting in my living room by myself, like I said. And just out of the curiosity, there was a small voice that said, "Just stand up, Mike, and go to the middle of the room and fall back, and I'll catch you." And I was thinking, well, that's kind of an odd request, but I'll do it. And as soon as my rear end hit the floor, all this demonic stuff started hitting me. And my dad, who had been passed away for 8 years, he died when I was 15, appeared to me. And he said, "Go in the back room and grab my shotgun and blow your effing head off." Right. And
Wow.
I went from that, Jose, to just being, trying to get out of that mindset and trying to get to safety. And I didn't know where to turn. I looked out the window, and all the cars were driving by of people that I had known throughout my life, walking up to the house, and with my dad too, saying, "Let's go watch this worthless pile of shit blow his brains out." And
That was a demoniac representation taking the
yes, yes,
oh,
that was my first introduction to what it meant to be bipolar and have mental illness. And the saddest part about the whole story of my life, in a nutshell, Jose, is that it took 11 years after that episode and not being on any type of medication at all to have even a worse severe mental break where I act. And these two episodes are on my sample chapters on my website. Okay. So I wanted to make that clear. But anyway, in 1999, now, like I said, 11 years later, right before Thanksgiving, so it was right around this time frame in 1999 when Y2K was all going on. I had sent away for the Anthony Robbins Personal Power series of tapes to try and better myself as a manager, because by this time I had been promoted up in the ranks at the city transit system, and I was the manager of running the whole show with 20 some employees underneath me. That's the reason I sent away for the tapes. So once the tapes shows up, I'm just cramming all that information in and not sleeping. And the people that always work with mental illness patients say that you need your sleep above,
Yeah.
more than anything,
Yeah.
and along with a good diet and medication, everything else. So, but I didn't know I was struggling with bipolar, because like I said, I wasn't diagnosed at this time in my life. But after this episode I'm about to explain, they finally did diagnose me. And so what happened was, I'm going back to work in broad daylight. I live in West Fargo and my office was in downtown Fargo. So I'm on Main Avenue during rush hour traffic, and I'm hearing these small voices say to me, Mike, what do you really want out of your life? And I thought about it and I said to myself, well, I guess more money would be nice. And it's like, no, that's not the answer. Then I thought to myself, well, peace of mind. No, that's not it. So I'm coming up with all these responses. And finally, I just crossed over I-29 and I was still on Main Avenue. And the voice came to me and said, Mike, when it all shakes out, what is the one thing that you really want out of your life more than anything? So I pulled my car over to the side of the road, Jose, and I said, well, I guess I just want acceptance. When it all shakes out, that's the only thing I want out of life. I think it just comes down to acceptance, self acceptance, right?
Hmm.
Then the voice said to me, clear as day, Jose, like God Himself was talking to me, saying, Mike, I do accept you. I love you, and I died for you. Now go out and share that message with the world. Okay.
Wow.
So what happened was I get out of my car and I start stopping traffic on Main Avenue saying the end of the world is here because of the Y2K thing. I thought the end of the world was here.
Yeah,
And God,
everybody was thinking that.
yeah, and God loves you. So now go out and repent and, this, that, and the other thing. And pretty soon I'm doing this for quite a while. A policeman stops and pulls me off out of traffic and says, hey, Mike, what's going on? Are you okay? He could tell I wasn't on any kind of drugs or alcohol or anything. I was just hearing these voices, right? And so he said, well, let me take you to the hospital, get you diagnosed, see what's going on with you and stuff. And who do you know in town? So he's asking me all these type of questions to kind of see, what the story was. And I said, well, first off, I know your boss. He's the chief of police. And, which is true. He's married to my little sister. And then, anyway, so I gave him his name, and then I said, and I gave him my wife's name, who runs the Big Brother Big Sister program in town. And so he, now that he gets that information out of me, he calls them. Everybody's gathering now and meeting me at the hospital. Okay, so that's kind of the backdrop of it. And what happened to me after that, Jose, was all those voices turned very demonic in the hospital.
Oh,
They
wow.
started they started going back to that episode in 88, right? So again, with that 11-year span in between. And so this all starts happening to me, and I demanded to be let out of the hospital because I thought the voices were in the hospital or something bad was in the hospital. Because I couldn't make sense of it. And anyway, so they released me against doctor's orders, and they put me back uh, in. So I went home that night, and I was pacing the floor. I could not sleep. I couldn't get my mind to stop thinking about all this craziness going on in my head. And the next morning, my wife, when I woke up, I was in total torment. She said she could see my eyes roll back in my head, and I was screaming out
But
like
they
I was.
they medicated you.
That was no, they didn't medicate me at all. They were trying to figure out, what was going on. So um, I wound up going back to the hospital. This time the ambulance came and put a straitjacket on me and took me to a padded cell where I toured what I can best explain as actual hell. Where I was in there, I felt the heat, I saw the demonic imagery. And I share this with all the people that allow me on their shows and say, hell, or my version of what I actually went through, is a place of remembrance. You remember all the people you hurt, and you remember all these things,
You've
right?
been you've been to have like flashbacks.
Yes, yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was just so intense that that changed my life so severely that for 20 years plus after that, I couldn't function in society. I wound up losing my job as the city transit manager, directing that, and I lost everything. So lost my jet ski because I couldn't function in life. They put me on all these medications. After that, they finally diagnosed me with being bipolar, and but it was a lifelong struggle because after that I wound up cycling again uh, in 2019 severely. That's when I wound up in the two different homeless shelters and in the civil commitments.
When
And then
you finished in that shelter was because your wife abandoned you?
yeah, basically left me for dead. Yeah.
Okay.
Now we're still living together, but it's a very strained relationship. But at the time, she was saying you need to be down there, get your medications balanced, because if you come home, it's just going to be another revolving door again of in and out of the psych wards and all this other stuff. So she wanted me down there. And in the book, I write about 2019, the year in review, and it's in there. It talks about how I wound up getting out of the first one, went through two civil commitments, two stays in two different jails, and then actually being institutionalized. So when they put me in the state institution out in Jamestown, North Dakota, which is 100 miles straight west of Fargo, every week they would put me in shackles and they would take me um, in the back of a paddy wagon all chained up and take me to Fargo to stand trial in front of different judges to beg for my freedoms. And what happened, Jose, was horrible because when I got to the front and actually got to speak to the judge all 5 weeks in a row, each time, I just broke down in tears because I was thinking to myself, I didn't commit any crime. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't kill anybody. I didn't
You
even,
were a victim of the
yeah,
situation. Yeah.
yeah, of the mental health, right?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't make sense of it. And what I found out later in life was that after everything got straightened out, I now have such a mission and such a heart after God for those people that struggle with that stuff, that's really why I believe today, looking back on it now that I'm 61 years old and have peace of mind. I think that it was all meant to be so I could have a very sensitive heart to people that struggle with mental illness, because that's about the only way I can make sense out of it all. These days, I'm very involved up in Fargo with the jail chaplain ministry, helping those people out. I have custom gear here. You can see 22 veterans per day, it
Okay.
says up here, which is suicide awareness for the veterans, because 22 per day commit suicide, give or take. That number's sometimes goes down, sometimes higher, but in general, it's around 22 veterans a day are taking their own life. So I go on these shows for mental health awareness and stuff to say that those numbers don't have to be that high, you know. And
Have
I
you
was,
ever thought of starting a nonprofit?
yeah, I'm actually working on that right now. I'm involved with a nonprofit out in Dilworth, Minnesota, which is across the town in the metro area up here, called Seeds of Hope Food Pantry. And what they do is they just serve food to the poor. And I was scheduled to go. So I'm getting underneath their umbrella as like a sub nonprofit to raise money for the poor and to raise more awareness for the military guys and do all my charity work underneath the Seeds of Hope nonprofit. So I'm in the works of doing that. I've only been involved with them for about a month, but after all my podcast appearances, I was able to raise a little over $5,000 to be able to get them two new refrigerators and a new freezer for their food pantry. So when I come on the shows, I ask for donations on my website because all the money goes to those guys. I'm financing all my stuff off of my disability check that I get from the VA. So I'm retired these days. And I've been doing podcasting, guest appearances now for almost a year, but I have been on every continent in over 180 countries since the 1st of January.
So you have
Telling
been really going frequently, and what is the reaction of the people when they hear you?
I think the reaction of the people is one, shock that I had to go through it. Two, they can tell it's authentic and real because sometimes when I go on shows, I get very emotional trying to kind of relive those episodes that I share with you. And, because it scarred me and it scarred my family for life, going through all that. So it was very real. And I always joke and say I have all the medical records to prove it if anybody wants a copy.
You
you
know,
know,
it's interesting what you're saying because, well, I went through a situation too, and I have been also. By the way, I started this podcast after being guest like in 200 shows all
yeah,
over the world too. So I decided, okay, why I don't begin to do my own podcast because I was sharing my story, but I wanted to hear the other people's stories, you know.
right.
And
Yeah.
the people always ask me, don't you feel bad share your story? Doesn't revisit the event you went through? No, I believe that is healing. So how you
Yeah.
feel about that?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head, my friend, because it is healing. When you do go through those episodes and relive them and share the real truth about them, that other people get blessed by it, and I get blessed myself in return for getting that message out. So I thank people like yourself and others that are out there doing the Lord's work by offering platforms to people once they read my bio that don't get scared by it and say, well, this guy's either too crazy or too this or too that to have on the show.
No, I believe that when you go to a situation like your case, that you really touch the bottom. So
Yeah.
so coming back and sharing your story becomes to be a blessing. It comes to be a calling. So God calls you to share your story because that is the way you can help others. You know?
Yeah, and I saw a documentary here that kind of sums it all up, my life and everything. It was about the artist Prince, that was so musically inclined that passed away a few years ago,
Oh
and
yeah,
I was so attracted to the show because they were doing a summary of his life after he died, and being from Minnesota like him, I was interested in the story, so I was watching it, and his best friend was speaking and said, I bet that if Prince would have never been famous. And if he just would have worked in a factory or something and had a couple kids and died that kind of normal, quote unquote, life, he would have been a lot happier man because if you got to know Prince, he was one of the loneliest persons on the planet, you know.
yeah,
So we know, with not just Prince's story, but others like him that got famous and did all these, things, toured the world and had all the money and were miserable. So, I think that God has placed me and put me on this earth to share my message and encourage people by saying the same thing I do on all my shows, which is we are all unique. We all have our gifts, right? And if I don't want to spoil the end of the book for you, The Purpose Driven Life, but if you read that book, in the end of it, it's all that we are here with those gifts and talents to carry out the Great Commission. We're here to preach and to bless others with the gospel message. And I share my favorite Bible verse, which is out of Revelations 12:11. We've overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So that right there shares exactly what you were just talking about. What a blessing it is for you to have shows or to be a guest and to share your testimony about what you endured because it blesses other people.
the power of the testimony is incredible because when you're sharing the testimony, nobody can refuse that how God works because
Right.
you're proving in a life way. I want to say something here because when I was hearing you talking about Prince, I remember I interviewed the other day a guy that he was a big PR guy with artists, and he at some point he was the agent of Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, he told me the story that where when Robin Williams filmed Mr. Dubfire, he was hired to do a big show to one of these big companies, Fortune 400 company, and he did a big show with 10,000 people, big crowd. And when he finished, he was dressed up with Mr. Doubtfire. Everybody was laughing, you know. And when the guy finished the show, they were in Las Vegas. So he went to dinner with this guy, and the guy was totally depressed and told
Yeah.
him, Bruce, you know that I have my own demons.
Yeah.
And the people are hearing my story, they're laughing, and I'm really depressed. And
Yeah.
he took his life a couple of weeks after that.
Yeah.
So it's unimaginable how the people can be alone, can be having a lot of issue, and you don't see that because you see is the faces of the people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
when you have the opportunity to share your story and your testimony, somebody that's going through something similar like you, we will resonate with them. Tell me a little bit more about your book.
Yeah, the book is interesting. You know, it took my old joke, Jose, is that it took me 30 years to write it and 60 years to live it. So it came out of 30 years of journaling because what I would do, for some reason, God gave me the gift to say, Mike, you're in these places, write about it. And I didn't know why. Okay. But what happened to me, and this ties right into the book, it never would have got published except for one factor that happened to me, which was almost a year ago now. To be exact, December 14th of last year, I watched my best friend die of cancer, Brad Witzke. And I would take Brad out to eat all the time. I would take him fishing and out jet skiing and stuff. And so Brad turned to me one time. This was after one of his last radiation appointments, and he said, Mike, do you think I'm going to die soon? Right? Just a very poignant question. And I said, well, you know what, Brad? Here's how I would answer you. I said that if you do die sooner, and I'm not saying you're going to, but if you do, look at what you're leaving behind for everybody on earth to still have to go through every day of their life. And you're going to be in eternity with no more cancer, no more of this suffering, no more any of this pain. And you're going to be so much better off, right?
Yeah.
And that encouraged him. And I shared that story because I'm honest to say that about 2 weeks after Brad did pass away, I sunk into a really deep depression for a couple of weeks. So I was sitting there after the first of the year, a couple of days after the first to be exact, and I thought to myself, this is enough of this feeling sorry for myself. Brad would not want to be honored or have his memorial, you know, go out like this. He would want me to carry on and make something of my life because I was sharing with him at the time before he passed away that I was thinking of getting into something to share my testimony, but I didn't know anything about podcasting or anything. So he never saw it take off. But the first of the year rolls around, and then I thought to myself, I'm going to put together all of those notes in my writings to get them published into a book. And
Okay.
that happened. I got them published in January this year out in with Brooklyn Publishers out in New York. So the book is on the bottom of the website. I sell it for $7.99 to raise money again for the food pantry so they can either do that or they can donate. And I wanted to put one other thing in there is that if they want to reach me directly, I give out my personal business email in there, which is you already have, which is Mike at theguttergospel.com.
Mhm.
So if you can include that, be nice enough to include that in the show notes.
Include me the email, include me the link to your web page, and
Yeah.
anything that you want to share included there. So I will put it show.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, I'll have the donate tab on there in the homepage where they can find the book and the sample chapters for free if they want to go through those that I described in the sample chapters. That's what I would give you in return for having me on. So right now I'm doing about 2, 3 shows a day, with my podcasting. So I'm getting the message out there, staying very busy. I was sharing with a good friend of mine that he would be a great guest for you too. He served 5 tours in Afghanistan and he helps out Afghani families with his disability check from the military.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's a pastor. I talk to him every morning, Pastor
Oh,
Baha.
well, invite him. Send the information to
Yeah.
me and tell him to refer you so we can have a beer. Yes. I really, I'm very, very grateful that I I enjoy what the people are doing with their, you know, ordeals. You know, the people that I'm knowing a lot of people that have make incredible things after going through a lot of things, and I think that God is in the move. No,
Yes.
it's like a big movement that I feel coming,
Yeah.
and it's great. And it's
Yes.
great that you can see a lot when you are connecting through this show with people like you can feel that this is like a movement, and it's coming and growing. It's like a revival.
Yeah, it
And
is. It is a revival. You know, ever since people were saying, well, after Charlie Kirk died,
oh,
who's
Charlie Kirk, yeah.
yeah, who's the next Charlie Kirk or whatever. And it's not about who's going to be the next Charlie Kirk because everybody is an individual and he was a very gifted orator. So I just look at it like God is using ordinary people and raising them up, you know, from, in my case, the gutter or from, you know, other people's same story. Just, you know, interchange a couple chapters. It's kind of the same premise, you know, where they struggled with addiction and all this other stuff and God brought them back out of that. But when you talk about revival, I couldn't agree more. And when you get into the jails over here in Fargo in Cass County and you see these guys hungering and like 40 guys getting baptized every night in the jails and coming out of that background, I'll share this with you. There's a very good friend of mine named Mike Sanjo up here that is the head guide that goes into the jails and preaches to them. And he said to me one time in a just me and him talking, he goes, Mike, you know, it's an interesting story with these prisoners. I used to have to take mission trips to Chicago to minister to them in the ghettos. But now I find that I don't have to leave my home because all the guys that were down there are coming up here trying to peddle drugs and I meet them in the jails.
But
So,
it's great. It's great. You know, I have a friend of my church that he was, you know, I always saw that he had something special. And one day he came to me and said, Jose, I'm going to say bye to you. And I said, why? Because I had to go to jail. I got, what happened to you? So this guy was going in a process because he was uh, an officer and went something bad with drugs, this type of, and he was convicted. So he was in the process in the trial, and finally he was convicted. He went to the jail like a couple of weeks ago.
oh,
But I told he's gonna stay 5 years. He's gonna stay five. He was gonna stay 25 years, but the judge saw the way he had transformed and gave him only 5 years. And I told him, Chris, you're gonna do fine because
yeah,
you are converted now. You're gonna be the change in that jail. You
yep,
God put you there because you're gonna transform life. And
that's great.
I saw his wife this weekend, and I came to her and said, "How is Chris doing?" Said, "Oh, he's doing great. He has a lot of fortitude, and we're blessed that we can have emails between us."
Yeah,
And then the Holy Spirit came to me and told me, "Go and tell her that write those emails intentionally because you're gonna write a book with that." And I
yeah,
came back to her and said, Julie, you have to be intentional when you begin to write with Chris, because
yeah,
that's going to become your testimony and that's going to become your book. So I told them, when I went to my hostage situation, I I didn't know why I was going through that. I discovered that when I came back. He had the blessing that he knows his purpose.
yeah,
So that he went to the jail in a moment where his life was transformed. So
that's
he's
right.
gonna transform lives there. That's the beauty of what God does.
Yeah,
It-
because it's like, you know, what the enemy would have for bad, God always uses it and turns it into good.
too good, yes, yes, yes.
So that's the miracle worker that we serve, Jose.
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, it's been great, Mike, having you here. Tell me, beside this collaboration with nonprofit, going to with the priest to the jails and doing the podcasts. What else you can share with the audience?
Well, I'll share this with them. You know, God loves them so much. I look at what Christ did for us at Calvary, how broken he was, you know, and how much he endured for us. The old saying is, you know, if you were the only person on the planet, Jesus still would have went to the cross for you personally. And, you know, when you look at Isaiah talking about how in chapter 55 that, you know, for we were healed by his stripes,
Yeah.
and those stripes, man, can you imagine being whipped in the back like that and the thorn of crowns and then being crucified and going through all that because that's his love for humanity, you know? And when you all shake it out, you know, with the power of our testimony, like I said, out of Revelations, the last verse I'll share with you guys, and this will relate to anybody struggling that was really down and out, right out of Psalms, the very beginning of chapter 40 in Psalms, which is that God has brought you out of the miry pit and put your feet on a sure foundation. So that's what I would like to share with people. He's pulling you out of those miry pits, in my case, out of the gutter or the miry pit, however you want to phrase it. And he's going to put you on a sure foundation to share your testimony. And that testimony is going to be what I told my friend about 2 weeks ago, that's a veteran out in Bismarck, which is this, and this is a good way to end the show. He said to me, Mike, what would you like the one thing to be put on your headstone once it's all said and done? And I said, you know what? Mike reached one. That's all I want on my headstone. With his
Yeah.
testimony, he reached one person, right? And that person in turn will reach one. And when you go into my book, that's what chapter 70 through 75, those pages, Sea of Tears, is all about. How Christ appeared to me in a dream and said, Mike, if you can spend as much time, like I did with Brad, just blessing one person, right? Above and beyond the call of duty, that one person's going to reach another one. So that's what I would like to leave you with.
Well, you will create that ripple effect. Well, my friend, this has been a great show. Thank you for being here. As I mentioned, I'm gonna end in a couple of weeks from now because I have someone on the road. Give me all your contacts, so I will put it there. And well, thank you for being here, my friend.
Yes, Jose, it was a pleasure meeting you, and all the best with your new TV show and everything else you got going on. You got a tremendous story, my friend, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. I had to go running because I had to record two programs today in the channel.
All right, my
Okay.
friend. You
Bye
stay
bye, my friend.
blessed.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.